Let me tell you something. I thought I understood discipline. I thought I knew what self-control was. I done fasted before for health. I skipped meals trying to lose weight. I've been broke before. That's a fast right there. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for my first Ramadan. Now, hold on. Don't laugh yet. Because when somebody first explained it to me, they said, from sunrise to sunset, no food, no water. I said, no water? Not even water. Who made this rule? And then they said, it's about obedience. It's about submission. It's about spiritual discipline. And I sat there thinking, okay, this ain't just skipping lunch. This is different. See, when you choose not to eat because you're busy, that's one thing. When you choose not to eat because you're dieting, that's another thing. But when you don't eat because you're saying, God, I'm doing this for you, now that hits different. That's not a physical challenge. That's a heart challenge. And I ain't gonna lie to you, that first morning before sunrise, I was confident. I had my pre-dawn meal. I felt strong. I felt committed. I said, oh, I got this. This ain't nothing. That confidence lasted about 3 hours. Around mid-morning, my mouth started feeling like a desert. And you don't realize how much you think about water until you can't have it. Every commercial on TV suddenly about drinks. Every sound of somebody pouring something in a glass feel disrespectful. I'm sitting there watching somebody sip coffee like they auditioning to torture me. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this again? And that's when it hit me. That question right there is the whole point. Because Ramadan ain't about starving. It's about confronting yourself. See, when you remove food and drink, you remove comfort. And when comfort disappears, your true character starts talking. You find out real quick how patient you are. You find out how easily irritated you get. You find out how much of your day revolves around satisfying urges. And I noticed something about myself. That first Ramadan, I was quick-tempered when I was hungry. I didn't think I was. I thought I was calm. But hunger exposed something. And that's what this month does. It exposes you. It peels back layers. It makes you aware of habits you didn't even know had control over you. And here's the deeper part nobody tells you before you start. It ain't just about food. It's about your tongue. It's about your eyes. It's about your thoughts. You're supposed to guard all of that. So now I'm not just battling thirst. I'm battling impatience. I'm battling sarcasm. I'm battling ego. And I started realizing this fast was less about my stomach and more about my soul. Because when you willingly deny yourself something halal, something permissible for the sake of God, it trains you to deny yourself things that are harmful the rest of the year. That's powerful. That's discipline at a whole different level. And by midday, when my energy dropped and my head felt light, I had a choice. I could complain or I could reflect. And I started thinking about people who live with hunger not by choice. I started thinking about gratitude. I started thinking about how spoiled we are with constant access to everything. And suddenly, the thirst felt smaller. The hunger felt purposeful. Because it wasn't just deprivation. It was alignment. It was me saying, I am not controlled by my desires. I answer to something higher. And that realization, that was the beginning of understanding Ramadan. Not as a burden, not as a punishment, but as a reset. And that first day, oh, it humbled me real quick. Now let me tell you about the part nobody prepares you for, the clock. Oh, that clock becomes your enemy your first Ramadan. I'm telling you, time moves different when you're fasting. Normally you blink and half the day gone. But when you can't eat or drink, every minute introduces itself. Around noon, I started calculating things I ain't never calculated before. Okay, if sunset is at this time, and it's only this time now, that means I still got how many hours? And when you first start, You treat it like a countdown to survival. You're just trying to make it to iftar. You thinking about that first sip of water like it's the greatest achievement of your life. And let me tell you something, when that iron goes off at sunset that first day, that sound hits different. It ain't just a call to prayer. It's relief, it's victory, it's gratitude all wrapped into one. But here's what surprised me. The hunger wasn't the hardest part. It was the awareness. See, when you're fasting, everything slows down just enough for you to see yourself clearer. You realize how often you snack out of boredom, how often you sip something just because it's there, how often you scroll your phone just to distract your mind. Ramadan removes the autopilot. It forces you to be intentional. And that intentionality, that's uncomfortable at first. Because most of us live reactive lives. We respond to cravings, to notifications, to moods. But when you're fasting, you can't just respond to every urge. You have to sit with it. And sitting with your urges teaches you something powerful. They pass. That craving that feels overwhelming at 1 p.m., by 1:20, is different. That irritation that spikes because you're low on energy, if you breathe through it, it softens. And I started realizing, man, how many of my bad decisions outside of Ramadan happened because I didn't wait? Because I didn't pause? Because I didn't let the urge pass? Fasting trains you to pause. It trains you to remember that you are not your impulse. And that's freedom. Real freedom ain't doing whatever you feel like. Real freedom is controlling what you feel like doing. And somewhere around the second or third day, something shifted in me. I stopped looking at the clock as much. I stopped counting minutes. Instead, I started counting blessings. That water I couldn't drink all day, when I finally had it at sunset, I tasted it differently. It wasn't just water. It was mercy. It was provision. It was appreciation. And that's another thing Ramadan does. It recalibrates your gratitude. Things you used to overlook suddenly feel like gifts. A date fruit tastes like a feast. A simple meal feels luxurious. You become aware of how much abundance you normally take for granted. And then there's the nights. Oh, the nights hit different. After you break your fast, pray, and the world gets quiet, there's this stillness. And in that stillness, reflection gets deeper. You start thinking about your habits, your intentions, your relationship with God. You start asking questions you've been too distracted to ask all year. Am I living aligned with my values? Where am I weak? What needs cleaning up? Because Ramadan ain't just about abstaining, it's about refining. It's like spiritual training camp. You're working on patience, on generosity, on discipline, on empathy. And let me tell you something else I didn't expect. The community. Breaking fast with others, that's a whole experience. There's something powerful about everybody sitting there, hungry together, waiting for that same moment. Rich, poor, young, old, everybody equal in that hunger. That levels you. That humbles you. And when you finally eat, it ain't gluttony. It's gratitude. It's shared joy. And I realized my first Ramadan wasn't about proving how strong I was physically. It was about discovering how dependent I was spiritually. And that dependence, that wasn't weakness. That was clarity. And somewhere in the middle of that first Ramadan, I had a moment. Not dramatic, not lightning from the sky, not some movie scene, just a quiet personal moment that changed everything for me. Because up until then, I was approaching the fast like a challenge, like something to complete, like I was trying to pass a test. But Ramadan ain't a test you pass, it's a mirror you look into. And that mirror don't lie. See, when your stomach empty and your energy low, your ego don't have as much strength. You ain't got the same patience to fake kindness. You ain't got the same energy to pretend humility. And I caught myself one afternoon feeling irritated. over something small, something that normally wouldn't even bother me. And I had to stop and ask, why are you reacting like that? And the answer wasn't hunger. The answer was pride. Hunger just exposed it. That's when I understood something powerful. Fasting doesn't create bad character. It reveals what's already there. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the uncomfortable blessing of Ramadan. It shines a light on the cracks, on the impatience, on the sarcasm, on the ego that sneaks into conversations. And instead of blaming the fast, I had to own it. I had to say, okay, this is work I need to do. And let me tell you something, that kind of self-confrontation, that's growth. Because most of the year, we stay distracted enough to avoid ourselves. We busy, we entertain, we stimulated. But Ramadan slows everything down just enough for your soul to speak. And when it speaks, it don't whisper about food, it whispers about purpose, about alignment, about discipline beyond the month. I started realizing that if I could control my thirst for 14 hours, then maybe I could control my temper year round. If I could resist food that's completely permissible, then I could definitely resist things that harm me. And that perspective flipped the whole experience. It wasn't about endurance anymore, it was about training. Spiritual training. Because think about it, athletes train by putting stress on their bodies so they can perform better under pressure. Ramadan is stress on the ego so you can perform better in life. And then there was the prayers, standing in prayer at night, tired but focused. There's a different kind of connection that happens when you've sacrificed comfort all day. The words hit deeper. The gratitude feels heavier. You feel small, but not insignificant. Small in a way that brings peace, because you remember you ain't carrying the universe on your shoulders. And that humility, that's freeing. And I noticed something else during my first Ramadan. Generosity felt easier. When you experience hunger voluntarily, your empathy sharpens. You don't just intellectually understand struggle, you feel a glimpse of it. So giving charity don't feel like charity anymore. It feels like responsibility. It feels like solidarity. And that shift changes your relationship with wealth, with status, with comfort. You stop seeing them as entitlements and start seeing them as trust. And by the last 10 days of that first Ramadan, something else happened. I didn't want it to end. And that surprised me. Because in the beginning, I was counting hours. Now, I was counting blessings. In the beginning, I was waiting for sunset. Now I was valuing the daylight struggle, because the struggle was shaping me. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. Ramadan isn't just about surviving hunger. It's about refining character. It's about recalibrating your heart. It's about remembering that you are more than your appetites. And once you taste that kind of discipline, once you feel that kind of clarity, you start realizing this month ain't a burden. It's a gift. And when that first Ramadan finally came to an end, I remember sitting there thinking, man, I walked into this month thinking I was giving something up. But I'm leaving this month realizing I gained something. See, that's the twist nobody explains to you at the beginning. You think you sacrificing food. You think you sacrificing water. You think you sacrificing comfort. But what you're really sacrificing is excess, noise, distraction, ego. And in exchange, you gain clarity. You gain discipline. You gain awareness of God in moments you used to overlook. Because after 30 days of intentional restraint, you don't look at life the same way. That first sip of water on Eid, it tastes different. That first normal day of eating whenever you want, it feels different. Because now you know you don't have to. And that knowledge is power, real power. The kind of power that says, I am not owned by my cravings. And let me tell you something else that hit me hard. Ramadan showed me how much strength was already inside me that I wasn't using. We walk around thinking we weak because we give in so easily to everything. But you fast for a month, sincerely, and you realize you're stronger than you thought. You realize you can control your tongue when you want to. You can lower your gaze when you decide to. You can wake up early for prayer, even when your bed is comfortable. You can choose patience when your body is irritated. That's not small. That's transformative. And here's the real lesson my first Ramadan taught me. Discipline in private builds dignity in public. Nobody sees you when you're thirsty at 2 p.m. and you choose not to drink. Nobody applauds you for ignoring temptation when you're alone. But God sees it. And that awareness, that quiet accountability changes your integrity. Because now you ain't just behaving good when people watching. You aligning yourself when nobody watching. And that's maturity. And the other thing I walked away with, perspective. Problems that felt huge before Ramadan started didn't feel the same afterward. Because hunger recalibrates your complaints. Thirst humbles your arrogance. Standing in long prayer softens your heart. And when your heart softens, your outlook shifts. You start forgiving quicker. You start judging less. You start appreciating more. And I realized Ramadan isn't just a month on the calendar, it's a reminder that life ain't just about consumption. It ain't just about chasing pleasure and comfort. It's about submission. It's about discipline. It's about remembering that this world isn't the final stop. And when you live with that awareness, your decisions change. Your priorities change. Your tone changes. That first Ramadan didn't make me perfect. I still had flaws when it ended. I still had work to do. But it gave me a blueprint. It showed me what alignment feels like. It showed me what intentional living feels like. And once you experience that, you can't pretend you don't know the difference. So when people ask me what my first Ramadan was like, I tell them this. It was hard. It was uncomfortable. It exposed me. It humbled me. But it also strengthened me. It centered me. It reminded me who's in control. And it wasn't me. And that realization right there, that's peace. Because when you stop trying to be your own source and you reconnect with the one who created you, everything starts making more sense. Not easier, but clearer. And sometimes clarity is the greatest gift of all.